Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Quilts equals Art equals Quilts Artist Talks. I'm joined here today by Shin-hee Chin. She is our Best in Show winner for the year. Her piece, Trees in Late Autumn, was our Best in Show piece. She's from McPherson, Kansas, and we're so excited to visit with her today in her studio. Hello, Shin-hee.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Can you tell us a little bit about the piece that's in the show?
Most of my work is the base is a recycled blanket or a comforter. And so I had a wool blanket for a long time, about 10 years. And then before COVID, if I have a 10-year long stuff and I don't use it, I better donate it. And I was almost going to donate it, but then I feel like, oh, wait a minute, this has a certain character. It's like just kind of a old black and brown blanket. So I decided to work on it. And at the time, I didn't have any idea. So just usually kind of have a kind of base stitch, beige or brown stitch around it. Then while I was stitching, I come up with the idea of trees in autumn. My dad passed away 2 years ago, and 30 years ago, I and my dad make a book. I mean, he was English professor and translate 18th and 19th century English and American poem in Korean. So I grew up with those poems, but in the back I have a sketch of him, and then the writings that it is William Butler Yeats' poem about the withered tree, kind of show the tree itself and then go into the truth. And so I use the image. When I get the inspiration, the word is there, and I wanted to find the image to fit into the theme. So autumn tree is the one that the beauty of the leaves is gone. And so people look at it a little bit sad or cold, but for me, it is the one that saving the life and the leaves on the kind of a ground, and it became a fertilizer for the next year. When I have the image, I sketched out the trees. Those trees are not having any heroes. There's no focal point. It's all the small or kind of a tree, the group of trees create the scene. So that was one that maybe I'm one of the trees. I don't necessarily have the spotlight, but I'm working myself in the group, but also kind of preserving life and preparing for the future. And I also pause the moment because I have a great idea, but then while I was working, who cares about this tree? I mean, for me, it is beautiful, but I wonder whether people find the beauty just like I do. That was my question. So it was very surprised that I got the best of the show, because I know the quality of the show in a art center. So I'm so thankful that I'm part of the show. So I didn't ask more. I mean, it was so honoring and also humbling that this is not that colorful, not great work, but showing the somber kind of state of life. And so I'm very thrilled and thankful.
Aw. Well, we love it. And one thing I picked up on, and I did not realize, is you said you are one of the trees in the piece?
Yeah. Yes, and then also when I internalize myself as one of the trees, that I don't necessarily show myself in the daylight. I like to work at night or work in a basement. I don't necessarily show all of my stuff, but like this kind of opportunity I do. But I'm just happy what I'm working on, and I found my joy when I'm creating. So as I said, that the trees that working at night, trees that people doesn't notice that, but still making their own ways. And so that's, yes, that I can identify I'm one of the trees.
I think a lot about coding, where, you know, no one may ever know that you, well, unless they do an interview like this, that you are one of the trees, or that the background is this poem and this connection with your father. But somehow the process of it being that blanket and the type of imagery and the buildup, it gives this sensation. And I'm always really interested in how that happens. And while, you know, someone might not be able to say, oh, well, that tree is her, you might be able to get a feeling from that notion. Those are things that make me excited about art.
I have my own intention, but I don't necessarily force my intention to the viewers. It's the viewer kind of look at it and then interpret their own. But if there's a chance that artists speak about the art and then people just get the connection of it, there is another beauty, that another communication. But even I don't necessarily speak about my art, if my art speaks on its own, it's like I kind of embrace my artwork for the time being. But once it's on its own independent state, I can let it go, just like my kids. So I'm very protective when I'm working on, but then once it has on its own kind of independence, and then I let it go. And so it's a kind of process.
A lot of your work is portraiture.
Yes.
There's a lot of figures in your work. So can you talk a little bit about specifically the stitched portrait pieces?
The portrait made a thread is actually, it is related to how I start my art making in America. When I came to United States, that was about 34 years ago. And I became a mother. And so I stayed at home and I kind of envisioned that someday I can go to the graduate school and create my work. But that dream looks a little bit impossible because my husband was studying and we are not necessarily have a lot of money. And so, but there was a dream that I want to go back to school. And so when I raised my kid, I saved all the old clothes of my kids. And that was my dream, that when I get to graduate school, it is the rag, but I'm going to use it when I'm painting. You need a lot of rag. And once I was in the program for my solo show, I have to create body of work and brand new canvas. The paint all are expensive for me at the time. So I was kind of in a painting. Also, I was working with a fiber, and one day I just come up with the idea about kind of crunching all the old clothes and then wind it and then start to create the human form. So it looked like a doll making a little bit, but then the thread was thrown away in the studio in a weaving loom. Once you're done with the weaving, then you have to cut from the loom, and then there's about remnant of the thread, about this much length. So I collected it because nobody used it, and then tie it, and then create the stitches. So I create the three-dimensional figure. That was my first thing with these stitches. And when we moved, settled in Kansas, I decided to recycle all the moving blanket to a quilt. So that time I used that kind of stitch technique, the random stitch technique, to two-dimensional faces. Then I paused a little bit because at the time, 2003, in a quilt world, there's not that many quilt made out of yarns or thread. Nowadays, they call it as a thread painting. I don't necessarily use the word because it's just a thread work. It doesn't have to be a painting. In my mind, I love painting its own right, but also I like a thread work. It's a humble kind of a stitchery, so I don't necessarily make it as a painting, but the idea is the same. So, and then also I start to teach at the college, so I didn't have that much time to focus on my own art making. So it was kind of a pause about 10 years. Then 2012, I sent my artwork to Europe, the European patchwork quilt. And so I kind of try, and so it was accepted. And so after that, I feel like, okay, if it is, then I'll keep on working on it. So I have several thread work of a portrait. Nowadays, there's a lot of portrait quilt, a lot of thread work. And then that kind of makes me think that what is my voice? I mean, I can make a good work with it, but if everybody tries it, I might be a little bit buried in that. Because so I try to find the other way around, that I didn't necessarily like to do the landscape that much because nature is already beautiful. Why do you copy that? That was my first idea about it. But then later I think about, it is not about imitation of nature, how I can internalize nature into my own way. So, and in Asian thought is I come up with the word that spirit resonance. It's the vitality of the spirit that from this mundane fabric and thread, and then I imbue the nature, and then look at the nature, that kind of a internalized nature through me, and then what can I find the beauty from that? So that is kind of about evolving.
All of your work, I think, as far as like other people who are working with what we would call thread painting, yours are very distinct. Your stitches are a lot different than others I have seen. You have this sort of really, or I would say, organized, chaotic energy that comes with the way you stitch. That's really nice. But then when you take it, you do a lot of other things. You have like installations. You have what you're calling like these yo-yo quilts that are little small things, and then you bound up rags. There's an energy to your work. Can you talk a little bit about like what that is like? Like, what are you putting into it, and talk about the yo-yo quilts, how all of that comes together?
When I was in Korea, I had a good education from art school, and then immediately I get a degree and I pursue a graduate degree. And then I came to United States, follow my husband. So before then that, I want to be an artist and also teacher in Korea. And when I came to United States, I lost my language. I mean, still language is inside of me, but I cannot communicate with my own language. So that was very hard. And at the same time, I became a mother. So I was a stay-home mom, and then speaking same word every day, just just wash your hand, good morning, let's eat. And so it's so cute. I love those moments, but I feel like, what is all my education go? What is all my ideas go? And I became a housewife. Was like I was all my kind of ideas and education look like it's gone. So that was very hard for about 7 years, a staying home mom. And when my son went to preschool, I went to graduate school. Before than that, I kept my dream alive, even though all the circumstances was not right and favorable. I kept my dream. And someday I can go to graduate school. So when I was in graduate school, my kids were in preschool, and so I have a very small amount of time. So I have to work very fast. So I learned how to work on time, and so have some kind of strategy. It's not great one, but certain time I have to focus, and certain I have to give up. And so that was kind of give me a limit, and then under the limit, I actually. At first it was hard, but I found some kind of freedom that I can do this much of work in about this much time. So the limit gave me some kind of ways to explore, and then in a painting you can use a big brush and then paint very quickly. So sometimes you just work it very fast, and then you have a layer on top. So I like the building up the layer in a painting, so some kind of physicality of paint and engagement myself to the big canvases. That was very exciting. But then that fast work asked me a question: that is that me? Is that what I want to do? I mean, I do love that painting itself, but then the other side is that as a housewife, I work with all by my hand. And so I kind of aware of my action with my hand. And then I feel like the hand is my tool. I realize the hand has some kind of brain on its own. And so when I could work with my hand, at first it's a clumsy. But then while I'm kind of working on it, I find my own ways. And so that is very honest of myself. But stitches, you cannot fake. I mean, you cannot make it faster. There's a way to do it. People use a sewing machine, which is great. Some other ways to do it. But for me, I start with a housewife. Housewife, you have to do it by hand. And then there is a personal engagement with the material, and I become to respect the tools, my hand, and then the abandoned material. So that is the one that kind of found that when you have all the limit, and then there's something that there's something is kind of around, and then I became connect myself to the mundane mediums. So the handwork becomes my voice.
We've talked a lot about your process, which I think it definitely drives how and why you work, but we haven't touched on your subject matter except for with trees in late autumn. How do you choose the images of the people that you incorporate into your work?
About the human face was I started with a body of work for the show when I work at the Tabor College. It is in Kansas, and it's a Mennonite college, and so the Mennonite college doesn't necessarily have a lot of respect about the fine art. I mean, they're making beautiful quilt. The beauty is related to the function, and so this non-functional art was not that much kind of appealing to the audience. So when I had a chance to have a show for our centennial, I make a body of work called it as a human family. And then again, I just wrote a grant right after the show. And so when I thought about human family, I kind of expand the human family in a globe. But at first, I start with my intimate family, and then it goes into the community, and then it goes into the state, and goes into the global. So it's a great idea. And when I starting with the family member, those are all Asian faces. And in Kansas, the area that I'm living, there's not many Asians. And so when I'm studying with my family faces, just all Asian, I feel like, who would care for that faces? And then it's my family faces. And so I feel kind of a little bit questioning myself whether it can be understood in a art context. But then I said that this all the small unit of family, whether it's in Kansas, whether it's in Korea, other places, they are the one part of the big family, the human family. And then it goes to the September 11 victims, so the Twin Towers. And so it kind of goes with the nationality, and then go to the global idea of it. So then this is another kind of a method that I recycled the fabric cord and then blanket stitch from the center. So it kind of shows a consecutive circle as a human form. So humans in a circle, that idea kind of go into, I call it as an imago Dei, and so in the image of God. And then later it goes to the labels that I collected right after I came to United States. And so every 2 years I make a label quilt. So at the time I didn't think I could pursue art. I didn't want to throw away the labels. And so every 2 years I make a quilt. And then I see that about 30 years later, I make 15 quilts. And then that is the portrait, because it kind of shows that baby clothing to the teenagers. And then also that is connecting my family to the world, that I don't know who is in Ecuador, who is in India, but those label kind of shows those the manufactured country. And so somehow we are all connected. And so that is my idea of making art. Then another show that I call it as War and Peace. And I have a lot of victims faces, or people who sacrificed their lives during the war. And so when I'm creating the subject matter, I read a lot about the person, and then find something that working with the person's legacy, or how she or he became a victim. So it was a little bit painful kind of a research, but I feel like there was kind of an urge myself as a kind of isolate artist, but still you can connect to the world. And then as an artist, I wanted to say something about humanity in general. So the human face is not about the portrait, but the life they lived. And so sometimes it is hard to work on. Yes.
Well, that absolutely gives a lot of context and insight to your work. What are you working on for the future?
Kind of a moving into abstract form, which I do have a lot of abstract collages. It's stored in the basement, but then I create the abstract collages, but the 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 texture, the tactile quality, and then also it looked like a kind of organic. You said that organic chaos. That somehow it looked like a cells a little bit, but I want to connect my texture, tactile quality into the idea, the abstract idea. So it is kind of a dialogue between the abstract form to the texture. And so working a lot of structure these days. Again, it is from the poem and then the ideas. And so the one that I accepted to Quilt National is that the end and the beginning is Wisław Szymborska. She's a Polish poet, and then I use her poem into my work. But the inspiration came from the poem. So I'm working on the idea from the poem, because I love poem. Poem is so condensed, the idea has its own beauty, but then how I can connect the poem into the abstract form of a fiber. So that is what I'm working on now. And I do create a lot of abstract forms. So that I do work on the small piece, kind of a textural kind of a piece. It's all kind of a recycled recycled postcard. And then this becomes my inspiration. So if I just connect my idea to some of the imagery, and then I kind of combine that. So this one is kind of done intuitively, do a lot of mixed media collage. And then the poem that I'm kind of inspired by, and then try to connect the two. So I become to love the process.
Well, thank you so much, Shin-hee, for joining us and telling us about your work. If you'd like to learn more about Shin-hee's work, you can visit her Instagram account, and she has a new website that's forthcoming. And definitely stop by the exhibit to see her piece in person, and we close on Sunday, January 10th. All right, thank you so much, Shin-hee.
Thank you.